Keanu Reeves was not a man who chased the spotlight, even though it always seemed to follow him wherever he went. Around the world, people knew his face, his name, and his movies. Some admired his action roles, especially the one where he played a mysterious assassin who could take down entire groups of enemies without losing his calm. Others loved his gentle and humble personality off-screen, where he lived without showing pride or arrogance despite his fame. To those who really knew him, Keanu was simply a quiet soul, someone who enjoyed peace, learning, and watching life unfold around him. On this particular day, Keanu had traveled far from Hollywood, away from cameras and interviews. He was in Southeast Asia, a place filled with culture, food, and traditions that fascinated him. While moving through the busy streets, he came across a Muay Thai training gym. It was not flashy or polished like the high-end studios back in Los Angeles. Instead, it was a simple space, with open walls that let in the hot air and the sounds of traffic outside. The gym smelled of sweat, leather, and determination. Young fighters trained barefoot on the mat, their fists and legs striking heavy pads with sharp sounds that echoed like thunder. Keanu stopped at the entrance. He had always admired martial arts. For his movies, he had trained in judo, jiu-jitsu, and countless hours of weapons practice. He had been coached by experts, some of the best in the world. Yet he never carried himself like a fighter. In his eyes, martial arts were more about discipline, respect, and inner balance rather than proving dominance. He leaned quietly against the doorway, watching the rhythm of the fighters' movements. No one recognized him at first. Dressed in a plain black t-shirt, loose jeans, and a worn cap, he looked like a traveler stopping for shade rather than a Hollywood star. The trainer of the gym, a tall and muscular man with years of Muay Thai experience, noticed him standing there. At first, the trainer thought nothing of it. Outsiders often came to look at the fighters. But then, as minutes passed, he grew uneasy. Who was this man standing silently, observing his students as if judging them? The trainer believed respect had to be earned, and in his mind, a stranger could not just walk in and stand at the edge of the mat like he owned the place. Some students began whispering. One of them thought he recognized Keanu's face but wasn't sure. After all, why would a famous actor be here in a local gym in the middle of the day? The trainer, however, didn't care about guesses. All he saw was a tall, calm stranger staring at his fighters without asking permission. That quiet presence felt like a challenge. In his culture, pride mattered inside the gym. Every fighter had to show respect to the trainer, and here was someone who hadn't even bowed or spoken a word. The trainer walked toward Keanu. He stood firmly, his arms crossed, his voice loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Do you want something here?" he asked in his native tongue, his tone sharp. Keanu, understanding the tension, gave a small smile and replied in English, "I was just watching. You have very talented students." His voice was soft, almost gentle, and it didn't carry the weight of arrogance. But the trainer misunderstood his calmness. To him, it felt like the stranger was trying to act superior. "Watching is easy," the trainer snapped. "Fighting is hard. Do you fight, stranger?" The students stopped their training. All eyes turned to the man in the doorway. Keanu shook his head politely. "No, I am only here to learn, not to disturb." He thought that would end the matter. He had no intention of stepping into the ring or drawing attention. But the trainer's pride was already burning. He could not let his students think a random visitor could come in and act like he was wiser. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing, and with a smirk said, "If you are not here to fight, then you should leave. This is not a show for tourists." The words carried weight, and some of the students laughed nervously. To them, it looked like their trainer was scolding a harmless foreigner. A few whispered again, still debating whether the stranger really looked like that Hollywood actor. But Keanu remained calm. He bowed slightly, out of respect, and said, You are right. Thank you for letting me watch. I will go. He turned to step away. The trainer, however, felt unsatisfied. He wanted to show his students that pride and strength ruled the mat, not silence or humility. As Keanu moved toward the exit, the trainer reached out and lightly shoved his shoulder. It wasn't a heavy push, but it was enough to stop him. The room went silent. The sound of fists on pads had disappeared, the rhythm of training broken by the sudden tension. Keanu froze. For a moment, the world seemed to pause. His calm eyes looked at the trainer, not with anger, but with a steady gaze. He could feel the student's eyes on him, waiting to see if he would walk away or respond. Inside, Keanu took a deep breath. He had been trained to control his emotions. He had learned through years of martial arts that reacting with anger only led to regret. Still, something inside told him that the situation would not end unless he showed a glimpse of what he carried within. The trainer smirked, mistaking Keanu's silence for fear. He raised his hands and gestured toward the mat. "One round," he said. "Show us what you have. Or leave, and never come back." The challenge hung in the air like a storm cloud. The students began to whisper again, their voices filled with curiosity. Who was this stranger? Would he dare to face their trainer? And if he did, could he survive even a few seconds against a man who had trained for decades in Muay Thai? Keanu, still calm, adjusted his cap and looked around the gym. He had not planned for this. He only wanted to watch, to admire the culture and skill of these fighters. But he also knew that walking away after being pushed would only fuel more tension. He did not want to fight. He did not want to humiliate anyone. Yet he could not ignore the challenge. In that silent moment, a small smile touched his lips. Not because he wanted to prove himself, but because he remembered something, an irony that none of these people knew. For years, he had trained under real martial arts masters, learning discipline for his films. He had endured long hours of practice, repeating moves until his body knew them by instinct. He was not just an actor pretending to fight. He had become skilled enough to impress professional fighters, even if he never boasted about it. The man standing before the trainer was not just Keanu Reeves, the humble traveler. He was also the man who had spent years becoming John Wick, the fictional assassin whose precision and discipline came from real training. But the trainer, blinded by pride, could not see it. To him, Keanu was just a quiet outsider. The gym grew quiet, the air heavy with expectation. Keanu stepped forward slowly, his calmness never breaking. The trainer grinned, thinking he had finally drawn the stranger into his game. The students moved closer, forming a circle around the mat. None of them knew that they were about to witness something unforgettable. And so, with silence pressing on all sides, Keanu walked toward the center of the mat, ready for what would come next. The circle of students around the mat grew tighter as Keanu Reeves stepped forward. His steps were slow, almost reluctant, but steady, like a man walking towards something he had already accepted. He did not look nervous, nor did he look proud. His expression was calm, as if this moment was just another experience in the long story of his life. To those watching, he looked like a stranger about to be humiliated by their skilled trainer. None of them could imagine what was truly hidden beneath his quiet surface. The trainer stood in the center already, stretching his shoulders and rolling his wrists. His stance carried the confidence of a man who had fought for years, who had tested his strength against countless opponents. He believed this spar would be quick. He wanted to teach the outsider a lesson: one round of pressure, a few strikes, and the man would bow out, embarrassed, never to return. The trainer thought this would remind his students that strength was everything. Keanu stopped at the edge of the mat and quietly removed his cap. His dark hair fell over his face as he adjusted it behind his ears. His eyes remained steady, focused, but not in the way of someone preparing for war. He looked more like a man preparing to listen to music, calm and patient. He slipped off his shoes, stepping barefoot onto the mat. The rough surface felt warm against his skin. For a moment, memories of film sets and countless hours of training flashed in his mind, long days of practice, bruises, sweat, and the endless repetition of movements until they became second nature. The trainer gave a short laugh. "Ready?" he asked, his voice carrying both arrogance and amusement. Keanu simply nodded. His voice remained silent, because he knew words were not needed here. Actions would speak louder. The students leaned forward eagerly, whispering among themselves. Some laughed, expecting the stranger to collapse quickly. A few, however, sensed something different. There was something about the way this man stood, his balance, his stillness. It did not look like the stance of a beginner. It looked like someone who had trained before. The trainer raised his fists and signaled the start. He moved quickly, testing Keanu with light jabs. Keanu did not strike back. Instead, he leaned just enough to avoid the punches. His movements were smooth, almost too smooth. The trainer narrowed his eyes. That was not the reaction of a nervous outsider. That was the reaction of someone who knew how to read attacks. "Come on," the trainer growled, stepping in with more force. His shin snapped upward in a quick kick toward Keanu's side. The sound of the kick cutting the air made some students flinch. But Keanu shifted his body just enough for the strike to miss, his foot sliding across the mat with grace. His eyes remained calm, not once breaking focus. The crowd gasped softly. The trainer gritted his teeth, now annoyed. He launched another attack, faster this time, combining punches and kicks in a flowing rhythm. His fists swung like hammers, his legs cutting through the air with speed. Yet each time, Keanu moved lightly, dodging, slipping, redirecting, never panicking. He did not strike back, but the ease of his defense shocked those watching. The trainer paused for a moment, breathing harder than he expected. He studied Keanu more closely now. There was no arrogance in the stranger's face, no mocking smile. Instead, there was only patience, as if he were waiting for the right time. That patience irritated the trainer even more. "You've trained before," the trainer said, his voice tight. Keanu only gave a small nod, acknowledging the truth without bragging. That simple gesture lit another fire in the trainer's chest. He wanted to test this man fully. He charged forward again, this time with real intent, his strikes sharper and heavier. The students gasped at the sudden change of pace. The air was filled with the sharp sound of fists cutting through space and the dull thuds of kicks striking pads of air. But Keanu did not lose his rhythm. His body moved as though it had rehearsed this moment for years. He bent, ducked, sidestepped, letting the trainer's power pass him by. And then, in one rare moment, Keanu raised his arm and gently deflected a punch with perfect timing. It was not aggressive. It was controlled. But to the watching eyes, it looked like mastery. The trainer staggered back, more from surprise than from impact. His students erupted into whispers now. Who was this man? How could he move like that? Some of them were beginning to connect the pieces. The face, the calmness, the movements, they resembled something they had seen before on screen. The trainer clenched his jaw and went in again. His pride was at stake now. He struck with elbows, knees, the weapons of Muay Thai, but every attempt was dodged or blocked with a calm flow. Keanu's defense was almost too graceful, like a dance. And though he never aimed to hurt, every movement carried the hint that if he wanted to, he could. Finally, the trainer swung with a wide kick, his shin slicing through the air. In that instant, Keanu stepped forward instead of backward. His hand moved with speed, catching the trainer's leg mid-motion. With controlled strength, he lifted just enough to throw the trainer off balance, then released without harm. The trainer stumbled but did not fall, his eyes wide with disbelief. The students gasped again, some even cheering at the unexpected moment. The trainer, however, froze. He had just realized something. The stranger was not just defending. He had shown restraint. He had shown the ability to control a fight without causing pain. That kind of discipline did not belong to an amateur. It belonged to someone who had trained with masters. For the first time, doubt entered the trainer's mind. He stepped back, raising his hands, his breathing heavy. His pride battled with his growing respect. Who was this man? Keanu lowered his arm slightly, his voice calm as he finally spoke. I don't want to fight you. I respect your skill. I only wanted to watch. The trainer stared at him, his chest rising and falling, sweat dripping down his face. The students were silent now, waiting for what their teacher would say. The trainer could no longer pretend this man was just an outsider. His control, his timing, his balance, it all revealed years of training. In the silence, one of the younger students finally whispered the truth aloud, his voice trembling with excitement. That's Keanu Reeves, the man who plays John Wick. The words rippled through the gym like a wave. The students' eyes widened as realization struck them. Some pulled out their phones, quickly checking pictures to confirm. Yes, it was him. The humble stranger who had just shown such skill was none other than the man who had trained for years to bring John Wick to life. The trainer's eyes widened too. Shock replaced arrogance, and respect began to bloom in his heart. He understood now that he had not been fighting a tourist. He had been sparring with a man who had dedicated years to mastering martial arts for his craft, a man who carried humility even with his skill. The trainer lowered his hands, slowly bowing his head. The students followed, bowing too, their whispers now filled with awe. Keanu gave a small, polite nod, his expression still calm. He had not come here to prove himself, yet the truth had revealed itself anyway. The air in the gym shifted from tension to respect. The lesson was no longer about strength, but about humility. And though the fight had not been a real one, every person in the gym would remember the moment for the rest of their lives. The gym was filled with silence after the truth came out. The trainer stood still, his chest rising and falling from the intense sparring. His students whispered quietly, their eyes wide with awe, as they pieced together what had just happened. The quiet man who had walked into their gym, the man who had moved with such ease and control, was not just an ordinary visitor. He was Keanu Reeves, the actor famous around the world, the face of John Wick, and someone who clearly carried real skill, not just what the cameras showed. For a few moments, the trainer did not know what to say. He had gone into the sparring match with pride, certain he would teach the outsider a quick lesson. Instead, he had been humbled. Not humiliated because Keanu never struck him with intent to harm, but humbled in the sense that he realized the quiet stranger had far more knowledge and control than he had expected. His pride had driven him to push the fight harder, but Keanu had responded with patience, balance, and mastery. The trainer looked around at his students. He could see the amazement in their faces. Many of them had probably seen Keanu's movies, but none of them expected the Hollywood star to stand right there in their gym, moving like a real martial artist. The trainer suddenly felt the weight of the moment. He had a choice, to cling to pride and pretend nothing happened, or to open his heart and respect what he had just witnessed. Keanu adjusted his stance, stepping back slowly, lowering his hands. His voice was calm, his tone carrying no arrogance. "You are strong," he said softly, his eyes meeting the trainer's. "Your students are lucky to have you. I wasn't here to cause trouble. I just wanted to watch and learn." Those words, spoken with humility, struck the trainer deeper than any punch could have. He realized that the man before him was not seeking to show off, not trying to embarrass anyone. Instead, he carried himself with respect, even after being shoved and challenged. It was rare to meet someone with such skill who also held on to such gentleness. The trainer bowed his head slightly, surprising his students. They were used to seeing him proud and commanding, but here he was showing respect to the visitor. You move like a fighter, he admitted. But with patience. Not anger. I did not expect that. Keanu gave a small smile, his face calm as always. I've trained for years for my work. But more than that, I've learned from teachers who showed me that martial arts are not just about fighting. They are about discipline, about respect, and about staying calm even when things get difficult. The trainer studied him quietly. He realized that Keanu was not just speaking about martial arts, he was speaking about life. And as he looked around, he saw his students listening carefully, their young faces absorbing every word. This was no longer just a sparring session. It had become a lesson. To ease the tension, the trainer asked him, "Where did you learn?" Keanu chuckled lightly. "Everywhere, in pieces," he replied. "For my movies, I train in many styles. Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, gun training, knife training, and yes, even some Muay Thai. I'm not a fighter like your students, but I respect the discipline it takes." The students gasped quietly, amazed at the list. They had assumed actors simply pretended on screen, that it was all tricks and editing. But here was Keanu Reeves, admitting he had trained in multiple arts, showing them through his movements that his skills were real. The trainer crossed his arms, thinking deeply. For years, he had taught his students that martial arts required dedication, focus, and humility. And here, standing before him, was a living example of those values, wrapped in the body of a man who didn't need to prove anything. The trainer's pride softened into admiration. Wanting to shift the moment into something more meaningful, the trainer raised his hand and signaled his students. "Line up," he commanded. The students quickly formed a straight row, their eyes still locked on Keanu. The trainer turned to him and said, "If you would, show them something. Teach them what your teachers taught you. They should see this." Keanu hesitated at first. He had not come to teach, and he did not want to take the spotlight away from the trainer. But when he saw the eager faces of the students, their eyes filled with curiosity and respect, he nodded gently. "Only if it's all right with you," he said politely to the trainer. The trainer gave a nod of approval, stepping back. "Show them." Keanu moved to the center of the mat again. The students watched closely as he stood tall, taking a deep breath. His movements began slowly. He demonstrated basic stances, the kind that built balance and control. His feet glided across the mat, his arms flowing in smooth, precise motions. To the students, it looked like a dance, but one filled with power beneath the surface. Then, with sudden sharpness, Keanu shifted into more advanced techniques. His body dropped low, twisted, and struck with perfect timing elbows, punches, grapples, and disarms, all fluid and controlled. He combined movements from different martial arts, showing how discipline could blend styles into something unique. The students gasped and whispered with excitement. Some even clapped softly at the end of each sequence. The trainer, watching from the side, nodded slowly. He recognized the discipline in every step. It wasn't just for show, these were the movements of someone who had repeated them thousands of times. After finishing, Keanu straightened up, his breathing calm, not heavy at all. He bowed respectfully to the students and then to the trainer. The students quickly bowed back, their respect now overflowing. One of the younger boys raised his hand shyly. "Sir," he asked softly, "if you are so skilled, why didn't you fight our teacher back? Why didn't you show your power?" The question hung in the air. Keanu looked at the boy, his eyes kind, and smiled. "Because true strength is not about showing power," he said gently. "It's about knowing when not to use it. If I hurt your teacher, what would I gain? Nothing. But by showing patience, we all gain something: respect, understanding, peace." The boy nodded slowly, his young mind absorbing the lesson. The trainer, standing nearby, felt those words deeply as well. He had been too quick to judge, too eager to protect his pride. But now, in front of his students, he had learned something greater: humility could be stronger than force. The atmosphere in the gym shifted completely. What had started as tension was now respect and inspiration. The students looked at Keanu not just as a famous actor, but as someone who lived the values of martial arts. The trainer, too, began to smile, his earlier arrogance replaced by admiration. He clapped his hands once, loud and firm. "Enough for today," he said to his students. "Remember what you saw. Strength is not only in the body, but also in the heart. This man has shown you that." The students bowed once more, their voices in unison as they thanked both their teacher and Keanu. The gym slowly began to empty, but the whispers and excitement continued. For many of them, this would become a story they would tell for years: the day Keanu Reeves walked into their gym, sparred with their trainer, and taught them the meaning of humility. As the students left, the trainer approached Keanu quietly. His voice was softer now, stripped of pride. "I misjudged you," he admitted. "You have my respect. You are welcome here anytime." Keanu gave a small smile and bowed his head. "Thank you. I respect you as well. Your students are strong, and they are lucky to learn from you." The two men shook hands firmly, a gesture that carried not just respect but also understanding. As Keanu stepped out of the gym and into the warm evening air, he felt a sense of peace. He had not come to fight, but the day had reminded him of something important: that respect and humility could build bridges even where pride once stood. Behind him, the trainer watched, silently grateful for the lesson he himself had received. And though the moment passed quietly, those who witnessed it knew they had seen something rare. A story was born that day, one that would spread beyond the walls of that small gym. The tale of a humble stranger who walked in, revealed himself not through words but through patience, and left everyone with a deeper understanding of what it meant to be strong. The air outside the gym was warm, filled with the smell of street food from nearby vendors and the chatter of locals going about their daily lives. Keanu Reeves stepped out quietly, blending into the crowd as he always preferred. To him, fame was not a shield and not a crown. It was simply something that followed him, even when he tried to walk in peace. But inside that gym, something had changed, not only for the students, but for the trainer as well. The trainer, whose pride had once pushed him to challenge the quiet visitor, stood at the doorway watching Keanu leave. For years, he had believed that strength was about proving yourself again and again. But what he had seen inside shook that belief. The stranger he had mocked turned out to be not only skilled but also deeply humble. He could have embarrassed the trainer in front of his students, yet he chose patience. That choice carried more power than any strike could deliver. Inside the gym, the students buzzed with excitement, replaying every move they had just witnessed. They spoke about the precision, the smoothness, and the calmness of Keanu's movements. Some imitated the way he sidestepped, others repeated his bow, and a few just smiled in disbelief. For them, this was not just an ordinary training day, it was a story they would tell for years. But the trainer was not finished. He called the students back into the gym before they left for home. His voice, usually sharp and commanding, was softer now, filled with thought. "Today," he said slowly, "you all saw something rare. You saw a man with great skill, but greater humility. Learn from that. Strength without humility is dangerous. Humility without strength is incomplete. You must carry both." The students nodded, their faces serious now. They had never seen their teacher so reflective. His words stayed with them long after they left, repeating in their minds as they walked through the busy streets. Meanwhile, Keanu walked quietly, not expecting the whispers that followed him. Some of the students' families had already heard the story by the time he reached the corner of the street. Word traveled quickly in the community. "The man from the movies was here," people said. "He fought the trainer and showed respect. Even without social media posts or cameras, the story was alive, passed from mouth to mouth with growing admiration. The next day, Keanu returned to the gym not to fight, not to prove anything, but simply to watch again. This time, however, the atmosphere was different. When he stepped inside, the students immediately bowed to him. They greeted him not as a stranger, but as someone they respected. The trainer himself approached Keanu with a warm smile and clasped his hands together in respect. "Welcome," he said sincerely. Keanu returned the gesture with a bow of his own. He sat at the edge of the mat, watching the students train. He did not interrupt, nor did he place himself above anyone. But his presence alone inspired the students to push harder, to move with more focus, to carry themselves with discipline. They wanted to show him that they had understood his lesson from the day before. The trainer noticed this change too. He saw how his students' movements were sharper, how their concentration was deeper. Keanu's quiet example had motivated them in a way he could not have done alone. He turned to Keanu and asked, "Would you like to guide them for a few minutes? Even one small lesson would mean much." Keanu hesitated at first. He was not a professional trainer, and he respected the authority of the teacher. But when he saw the hopeful faces of the students, he agreed. He stepped onto the mat slowly, his movements calm and deliberate. He showed them something simple, how to remain balanced when under pressure. He explained, in soft words, that fighting was not always about the fastest strike or the hardest kick, but about staying centered no matter what came toward you. He demonstrated by letting one of the students push against him with all his strength. Though the boy tried with all his energy, Keanu simply shifted his weight, moving lightly, never losing his balance. The students clapped, amazed by how effortless it looked. Then he taught them another small lesson, how to breathe. Breathing, he explained, is the first step to control. If you lose your breath, you lose your focus. If you keep your breath calm, you keep your mind calm. The students listened closely, practicing slow and steady breaths as they mirrored him. The trainer watched silently, his heart filled with respect. He had spent years teaching techniques, but Keanu was showing the essence of martial arts: patience, control, humility, and focus. His students were not just learning movements, they were learning values. By the end of the short session, the students bowed deeply to Keanu, thanking him. One of them, a teenage girl, said softly, "You showed us that strength is not about hurting. It's about protecting." Her words reflected exactly what Keanu had tried to show. He smiled warmly and nodded. "Yes. Always remember that." The trainer stepped forward and placed his hand on Keanu's shoulder. "You have given my students more than I could have given them in one lesson. For that, I thank you." Keanu shook his head humbly. "No. They already have a great teacher. I only reminded them of what you already give." The bond between the two men grew stronger that day. From challengers, they had become allies. The trainer no longer saw Keanu as just a visitor or a famous actor. He saw him as a martial artist, as someone who understood the deeper meaning of their craft. In the evenings that followed, the story of Keanu Reeves at the Muay Thai gym spread further. Locals told it with pride, saying how the actor had shown humility and respect in their community. Some said it was like a scene from one of his movies, but better because this time it was real. One night, as Keanu sat quietly in a small cafe nearby, a group of young men approached him. They were polite, bowing before speaking. "We heard about what happened," one of them said. "We came to say thank you. You showed everyone here that humility is strength. That story will inspire many." Keanu listened quietly, his smile gentle. He did not seek recognition, but he accepted their words with gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. "I am honored to be here." Back at the gym, the trainer carried himself differently too. The arrogance that once shaped his lessons softened into humility. He began reminding his students more often that respect was the foundation of all martial arts. He repeated Keanu's words, that true strength was not about showing power, but knowing when not to use it. His students noticed the change, and they followed his example, becoming more disciplined not just in training but in their daily lives. For Keanu, these days became a quiet memory, one he would carry with him long after he left the city. He had not expected to be challenged, nor to teach. But fate had placed him in a situation where his actions could touch lives. And just as his movies entertained millions, his real-life humility inspired those who met him in person. The Muay Thai trainer who had once attacked him now spoke of him with respect. That man, he told new students, is more than what you see on screen. He showed me that even someone with great skill can be humble. Learn from that. Be strong, but be humble. And so, the lesson spread not through punches or victories, but through respect. A lesson that would live in the hearts of those who witnessed it, and in the community that would never forget the day Keanu Reeves walked into their gym and reminded them what true strength really was. The days passed quietly after Keanu's time at the Muay Thai gym, but the memory of what happened there did not fade. For the trainer and his students, it became more than a surprising encounter with a famous actor. It became a lesson they carried in their hearts. What started as a moment of pride and challenge ended as an unforgettable example of humility and respect. The trainer, once known for his fiery temper and strict approach, changed in ways that even his students noticed. He still demanded discipline and hard work, but his voice carried more patience now. He repeated the lesson Keanu had shown him, that true strength was not about crushing others, but about protecting and uplifting them. His students began to admire him even more, not just for his skill, but for his wisdom. For the students, Keanu's presence lingered in their thoughts. When they trained, they remembered his calm movements, his soft words, and the way he carried himself. They spoke about how he never struck in anger, how he never lost his balance, and how he never allowed pride to control him. They practiced harder, hoping that one day they could achieve even a fraction of that control. The younger ones even started repeating his words about breathing and staying calm, using them not only in training but in their daily lives. The community around the gym spoke about the story as if it were a legend. Locals told one another about how a famous Hollywood star had walked into their small neighborhood and reminded everyone of what it meant to be humble. Some laughed with joy, saying it sounded like a scene straight from one of his movies. Others nodded seriously, saying it was proof that even those at the top could remain grounded. The tale grew, spreading beyond the gym walls, reaching nearby towns, and eventually appearing in small news stories online. Keanu, however, never sought attention for what happened. He returned to his daily routine, exploring the city quietly, eating at small local cafes, and greeting people with kindness. He never spoke about the sparring match, never told the story to the press. To him, it was a personal moment, something he cherished privately. Fame was never his goal, in that gym connection was. One evening, as the sun set over the city and the streets glowed with the warm colors of twilight, Keanu returned to the gym one last time. The students were finishing their training, their bodies shining with sweat, their voices filled with laughter as they encouraged one another. When they saw him step inside, they rushed forward, bowing deeply with wide smiles. The trainer approached him, his face lit with respect. "You honor us by coming back," he said. Keanu smiled softly. "I just wanted to say goodbye before I leave. Thank you for welcoming me here." The students looked disappointed at the word goodbye. They had grown attached to his presence, to the quiet encouragement he brought into the room without even speaking much. One of the boys, barely 12, spoke up shyly, "Will you come back?" Keanu crouched down so he could look the boy in the eyes. His voice was gentle. "Maybe one day. But even if I don't, remember this: you don't need me here to be strong. You already have your teacher, and you already have the lessons. Keep training, keep learning, and you will go far." The boy nodded slowly, his eyes wide with determination. The trainer, standing nearby, felt a lump in his throat. He had never seen his students so inspired. He turned to Keanu and said quietly, "You gave us more than you know. At first, I saw you as just a visitor. I judged too quickly. But you showed me that real strength is in humility. I will not forget that." Keanu placed a hand on the trainer's shoulder, his eyes warm. "And I will not forget you. Your passion for your students is strong. That is what makes you a good teacher." The two men shared a silent moment of mutual respect. What began as conflict had transformed into friendship. Before leaving, Keanu gathered the students together for one final moment. He stood in front of them, his voice steady but kind. "You are all strong," he told them. "But remember, strength is not just in your fists or your legs. Strength is in your heart, in how you treat others, and in how you carry yourself when no one is watching. One day, you will face challenges not just in fighting, but in life. Face them with respect, with patience, and with humility. That will make you truly unshakable." The students listened carefully, their young faces filled with admiration. Some nodded firmly, already committing the words to memory. Others whispered quietly, repeating his advice to themselves. The trainer bowed deeply, his students following, their voices rising together in thanks. As Keanu stepped out of the gym for the last time, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The trainer and his students watched him go, their hearts full. They knew they would never forget him, not because he was a famous actor, but because of the values he had shown them. For Keanu, walking down the quiet street, there was no pride in his heart, only peace. He had not come to the city to teach or to fight, but fate had brought him into that gym, and in the end, it became a lesson for everyone, including himself. It reminded him once more why he valued humility above all else. In the weeks that followed, the story continued to spread. People who had not even been there spoke about it as if they had seen it with their own eyes. Some said the trainer attacked him, others said it was just a spar. But the heart of the story remained the same. Keanu Reeves, the man known worldwide as John Wick, showed that real power was not in aggression but in kindness and restraint. The Muay Thai trainer, once proud and fiery, carried the lesson forward. To every new student who entered his gym, he repeated the story. One day, he would say, "A stranger walked in. I thought I could test him. Instead, he tested me. He showed me that respect is greater than pride. Remember this, a true fighter does not fight to show power. A true fighter fights only when necessary, and even then, with control." His students nodded, their respect for both their teacher and Keanu growing stronger each time they heard the tale. Years later, when people spoke about the gym, they did not just talk about training or competitions. They spoke about the day Keanu Reeves walked in, the day their trainer bowed to a man of humility, and the day a Hollywood legend reminded them all of the true meaning of martial arts. And though Keanu never returned to the gym physically, his presence remained. His lesson became part of their daily practice, whispered in encouragement, repeated in discipline, and remembered in silence. For Keanu, it was simply another journey in his life, one of many quiet experiences he carried without fanfare. But for those who had been there, it was a story they cherished, a story of respect, humility, and the reminder that even the strongest can remain gentle. The world often knew him as John Wick, the unstoppable assassin on screen. But in that small gym, he was known differently. He was the man who showed them that true strength lies not in the fight, but in the choice not to fight. And so, the legend of that day lived on, not as a story of violence, but as a story of peace.